Hey, everybody. Tim and Mike here. We're so glad you're tuning in. I got to say, Tim, you've had quite the week. Let's just review your week for a second, Tim. It's shocking that you're here. It's shocking that you've got your purple beanie on, that you're smiling, and that there's some sort of alertness to your face. What is going on?
Well, I am just one of tens of thousands who got the Omicron.
Yes, the Transformer.
Last week, that was my booster, but it turns out that I got the booster while having COVID, which is a no-no, but I didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got pretty sick for a few days. The whole family was sick. But this one's weird because everybody's out of school, and it's hard to test to be able to go back to school because the testing's taking like 5 days to get results currently in our area. So I just got my results like 2 nights ago from last week, and but I'm already like post symptoms, so who knows?
Yeah.
You know what was weird though is I was very frustrated because I still wear a mask everywhere I go, and I don't go very many places. And we've been very careful for 2 years, and none of us got sick. So I was frustrated this is a thing. But then the weird thing was I got weirdly depressed after I got my test result back. And I was trying to crack that last night, trying to figure out why did I feel that way. And there's something, and I don't know what the answer is. Maybe there's a therapist listening, they can chime in. But I wonder if it's the immensity of the existential dread that has been built around this. You know, we've watched so many people die, and we have so many friends that are nurses, and they're just, this morning, one of my friends that's a nurse was just like, hey, this is the worst it has been for a lot of nurses. Oh, man. And we are crying every day, and we're so overtaxed and overworked and overtired. And I cannot imagine being a couple of years into working with this. And so I don't know if it was all that once I finally got a test result that said positive, this weird, like, dark blanket. Because my wife she's so practical. She's like, well, yeah, you have it. Yeah, we have it. Like, let's just get better and go back to, she's good about that. And I'm just like, this blanket comes down. I'm like, what does this mean? Why did this happen to me? I can't believe this happened. Very weird. It was a very weird response.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm glad you guys are okay and better.
We're cruising now. Yeah, but our whole little friend group, they're all just down. Yeah, they're just dropping like flies.
Everywhere.
It's wild.
Oof, I know. This is just nuts.
Thanks, Obama.
Oh, if there's a way to pin it on him. I've got some good news.
I like that.
We have a community of people who continues to increase in their kind encouragement and support. I want to thank Dave and Sarah and Dawn and Tim and Dave Meacham, who goes to our church, and Jared. And then I shouted out Gabriel, but he goes by Gabe, and emailed in, is like, was that me? And I'm like, yep, it's you. So you're getting 2 shout outs, man. Thank you. But seriously, you all, or as they say here, y'all, thank you. Amazing. And if you're on Patreon and we don't have your address, could you give us your address? Because we wanna mail you some stuff, and so that'd be very, very appreciated. We have a new website, voxologypodcast.com. Check it out. Surveys, newsletters, and such. Today we have a really fun kind of story. So and I know we say this almost every single week, but we say it because it actually turns out to be true. The greatest joy of doing this thing the last, we're going on 7 years, Tim.
That's wild.
Good Lord. The greatest joy has been the relationships in the community that has developed. And, obviously we realize people don't listen to the podcast all the time, or they'll take years off and come back to it or whatever. But there's this really cool extended community that's out there that we've been hearing a lot from lately. And it's been, we've been hearing deconstruction stories. So I want to read a couple of those. And then we heard from a young lady, Renee, who is a public defender in Ohio who specializes with with cases on death, with people on death row.
Yeah.
And Tim, as you'll hear, has been stewing on the death penalty as a topic for us for a while. And it was just so cool to have her say, hey, I'd love to talk about this if you guys are ever interested in that. We're like, we're interested in that.
Yeah.
So we have an interview with her today. It's super cool. I mean, she is just an absolute dynamo. I mean, bright as all get out. So, but I want to read a couple of deconstruction emails. I'm just committed to every episode reading some of these stories. Like this one, this is a very short one. It's just really a note of appreciation. I really appreciated your conversation on deconstruction. The two biggest points that I really connect to is this idea of corporate believing balanced with individual faith. Me too. That's a huge one, the corporate aspect of our faith. He said, and the second one is the benefit of deconstruction. I question of what people are calling deconstruction is what really sanctification looks like. Sanctification is a fancy Christian word for becoming more like Jesus. And that's one of the things we've been suggesting. We would agree with this young man, absolutely, that part of the maturing process in Christ is wrestling through some of these things. If we are being sanctified to be more like Jesus and less like the world, it seems that this process of choosing to look less like the church and more like Jesus is really healthy.
Yeah.
Man, we would so agree. If we look at this from that point of view of sanctification, can we more readily lead people through and to this process? And that is all about the work of God and not us. So couldn't agree with you more, my friend. Thank you for writing in. It's from a young woman. Anyway, I'm writing to share my deconstruction story and add to the pile. Amen. We love this. I feel like mine is a different flavor, at least from what I've heard, read so far on the pod, and I'm wondering how many others like me are in your audience. Just for a brief background, I'm a 35-year-old young woman who was raised in a white evangelical Bible church in the buckle of the Bible Belt, which means I was also raised in a proudly Republican household. I heard all of the lovely conservative talk radio hosts in the car going to and from school, activities in church, and started reading conservative print media like National Review in high school. My parents even bought me a subscription of the mag to take to college so I wouldn't be converted away from proper political beliefs by those liberal elites in ivory towers. Smiley face. I've been slowly deconstructing since 2016, and I think that is a key date for many of us. Though that sped up for sure over the last 2 years. I don't consider myself spiritually homeless, though. I'm still an active member of the church I've been a part of since I moved to Arizona 10 years ago. My church is actually the place that has started and enabled my deconstruction. So this is great.
Yeah.
Back in 2015, our teaching pastor invited me and all the other small group leaders to take part in a year-long seminary-level course for lay people. It was during this class that the first scales started to fall from my eyes, and I learned that America is not and never has been the new Israel, and that the white American church actually resisted MLK and the civil rights movement. Fast forward to 2020, and my church leadership actually stepped up and decided to engage the racial justice conversation from the pulpit. We're a majority white church with a congregation that includes lots of MAGA bumper stickers and anti-vax, anti-maskers. So you can imagine how well that went down, but still our leadership decided to push ahead. And I was part of a discipleship group focused on racial healing, equity, and reconciliation. For the first time, I had a safe space to sit down with multi-generational groups of Christians, black and white, to build friendships and to talk through topics like racism and Christian nationalism that are so hard to discuss most of the time. Over the course of 2021, I learned to become comfortable asking the question, is this something the Bible actually teaches, or is this something my culture has taught me?
Yeah.
I've learned that it's okay, wise even, to ask that question of every, all caps, teaching I come across, whether at my church or another media I consume. Love that.
Yeah.
And love that the church was a part of this. I mean, this is the great opportunity the church has. To sit and write off people who are doing this is a failure of discipling imagination. My goodness. Why would you label somebody like this?
Because it's easy.
You know? Oh, all right. Last one. Young man, long-time listener, first-time emailer. So welcome. Shout out to Tim for being a fellow Enneagram 4. Shout out to Seth Erie for being the #1 GOAT hype machine for the podcast.
That's true.
I work with special needs kids myself, so I always enjoy hearing from him. Thank you, sir, for what you do. As the parent of a special needs child, I am so grateful for people who love him.
Yeah, and you can also see how much Seth loves those who have worked with him. He's Marco Poloing teachers from previous states, and
oh my goodness, yes,
talking nonstop about the ones that he's, hanging out with these days.
Yep,
you can see how far it goes.
Yep, he is a man who loves community. Like he is a man of community, for community, and by community. So anyway, to the email proper. Listening to all the emails regarding deconstruction, in particular, the many women and all of the grossly misogynistic context they somehow survived has really hit me in the feels. My own fiance experienced similar things too. Without launching into details, she explained at length about how her family's church and most of her life in any church context as an adult in her 20s, she has felt entirely visible to congregants due to her single status, academic work as a PhD student, and personality of being a go-getter and not being just a docile housewife.
Yeah.
Her own mother told her during her single days that if she just, quote, dumbed herself down, unquote, she would finally find a godly man. The irony is that she's far more intelligent than I could ever dream of, and I'm not really godly. And the thing for me is that everyone and their mother around me is deconstructing, even my own mother. Overall, when I look at the list of people in my life who are deconstructing, I'm kind of overwhelmed. For starters, let's throw in my entire family, mom, dad, sister, and brother. I'm the sole born-again believer in my immediate family. All my close friends are gone too, several acquaintances too. Furthermore, when I look at people who I knew over the years and look at their current social media and outlooks on faith, they've all, with few exceptions, jumped ship. Unsure of whether this was a wise thing to do, I just finished the Rise and Fall of Mars Hill, and I just get it. I get why so many people want to throw it out in a blaze of glory. I really, really do, and I appreciate that we do as well. I was 17 when I first heard Driscoll scream, who do you think you are?
Right.
This was a very popular clip back in the 2000s. I remember when I was impressionable, angsty about hypocrisy and desiring genuine spiritual insight in my life, when I abruptly heard this random, angry, and apparently important pastor confirm to me that I was probably not a godly man.
Yeah.
Wow. I wasn't ferocious. I wasn't macho. I wasn't a real man, nor did I want to be or even think I could be. But for so long, and sometimes even now, I struggle figuring out what biblical masculinity looks like, let alone biblical living in general. Man, preach it, my brother. Preach.
Yeah, us Enneagram 4s are not very macho.
But dude, if they saw your facial hair, they wouldn't say that. I mean, my goodness, Timothy. Oh, so good. A couple of other things. For the majority of my 20s, I left church, wanted nothing to do with hypocrisy, hubris, and people being jerks just for the sake of being theologically right. It was hollow then, it's hollow now. The biggest thing I think I found when I came back to the church in my later 20s was acceptance from Jesus that to wander is not only okay, but what he desires for us. It still feels weird to write that. But Voxology, my church, men's group, and counseling have all confirmed to me that I think the only place I can follow Jesus and still be authentically me is to follow him from the margins and to follow him quietly. I love that, to follow him quietly. Repentance has meant turning away from angry white supremacist God, trite Christianese comments regarding legitimate traumas and injustices, and the Christianity must win at all costs mentality.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I could read a story about Jesus and just be that little kid again that thought Jesus was really, really nice and be happy that he loved me. Biggest thing I look for now in other Christians is their fruit, if they actually genuinely, wholeheartedly, and imperfectly attempt to love others. I want to love Jesus, and it's just so weird that something so compelling like loving Jesus is so often confusing, disheartening, and freaking exhausting. And all God's people said, Amen.
I was thinking about that. I texted you the other day that I couldn't sleep, so I reread the first half of Shane Claiborne's first book.
Yes.
Where he talks about, like, you know, the simple way how they founded that and the church that the homeless people were occupying. The church tried to take it away, yada, yada, yada. But he talks about, like, who's doing it really well? Mother Teresa. And he just, like, goes to a convent and gets Mother Teresa's phone number and calls her and says, hey, we want to come live with you for 3 months to learn how to do this, and then do that. And they go and live in leper colonies and all this different stuff. And it's like, you watch how he, like, he's like, how does Jesus say to do it? Oh, let's try that. But there is a cost to it, and the cost is, you know, they gave up everything else outside of that. And I am way too terrified or clinging way too much to the comforts of my life to ever do that. And that's humbling. Yep. But it's a theme through everything, just how much, like, what does it mean to die to yourself?
Right.
And that's asking everything of you. And we're I am not willing to do that, and it shows in different areas. And it's so when, like, with that email, you just see, when you see people that are willing to do that, like to die to themselves and kind of sacrifice to what it is that Jesus is asking to be done, it's super inspiring and terrifying at the same time.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Well, speaking of inspiring people, here's Renee. And it was great. This was the first time we had ever met her.
Yeah.
And
it's always interesting.
Yeah, it was great. How cool. Just to hear somebody from our community. So hope you enjoyed the interview. We discussed it a little bit after, so stick around for that. Thanks for tuning in. All right, everybody. We are here with our new friend, Renee Monzon. And Renee, right now, live, is coming at us from Columbus, Ohio, Worthington, actually. And Renee, I just need a little glimpse of Columbus weather at this moment. What's happening outside? Take a look out the window. What's going on?
At this moment, it is cloudy, 32 degrees. And no snow on the ground, which is pretty typical, even though I would love the snow.
Well, a couple of things, Renee. This is a big deal because, first of all, cloudy and low 30s is what Columbus is for about 6 months of the year. And it's so depressing. Nashville, where I have moved from Columbus, at least it's sunny. So today it's gloriously sunny. It'll be around 50 degrees, but we have, Renee, we have like 3 to 8 inches of snow coming, and they don't know how to handle it down here. So the whole place shuts down. I mean, everything shuts down when we get hit. It's absolutely crazy. Are you getting snow with this storm too, or is it just?
I don't think so. We might get a little bit, but I lived in Minnesota for a year, so I had
good Lord,
cold, the snow. But the best part about Minnesota were the days when it was like 10 degrees, but sunny. You would have sunny days and bitter cold, and it was just beautiful.
Yep. Sunny matters. It's just how it works. Am I right, Stafford?
That's right. Sunny here.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. All right. So 2 of us are doing great, and poor Renee, it's winter in Columbus. All right,
That's
Renee,
it.
tell us. So we got this wonderful email from you, and we'll get into what some of it said. But tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into our topic. Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Orange County, California. So Placentia, Anaheim, all that area.
I love it.
Yeah, grew up in the church, non-denominational churches, Calvary Chapels, then on to Evie Free Fullerton.
What?
And I know. Funny, that's how I heard your name.
What? Oh my goodness. And where did you go to high school?
Valencia High School.
Okay, Valencia, go Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
Are they the Falcons?
Tigers.
Oh,
Close.
they're the Tigers. Okay. Well,
No
worries.
though.
Yeah, I mean, I gave it a shot. Now, then to college. Where'd you go to college?
I went to college at Lake Erie College in Northeast Ohio, Painesville, Ohio, to be specific.
Now, I think there's some in our audience who would be asking, what the H, Renee? You're in Orange County, California, Valencia, not the Falcons, but the who?
Tigers.
But the Tigers. And you go to school near Lake Erie.
Where our mascot was the Storm.
No, well, fitting, but unimpressive, nevertheless. What brought you there?
Lots of things. I wanted a school where I could be a political science major, and then I also ride horses, and they had a great equestrian program. So
they
it was
ride
one of the
horses
few,
in California too.
Yeah. But it was one of the few places where I could major in political science, be entirely dedicated to that, also be super involved in the equestrian program. And then they threw me a bunch of scholarships and I said, cool, let's go.
Yeah, Columbus, Ohio it is.
Uh-huh.
Political science major then.
And then, so I graduated college in 3 years and went straight on to law school with the intention of doing international law and working for the UN and fixing all the big problems of the world.
Perfect.
Quickly discovered that I did not like international law. I liked the American system of law, as screwed up as it is. I jumped from big firm civil litigation to real estate transactions. I was convinced I was going to be a law librarian for a while.
Wow.
And then end of my second year of law school over that summer, God just completely transformed my heart. It was one of those wake up moments of, Renee, you went to law school to help people. What does that look like?
Wow.
And reading Brian Stevenson's Just Mercy, listening to podcasts, watching shows, I was consuming as much information about the criminal justice system as I could. And like I said, total heart transformation. And I said, I need to be a public defender. Wow. And so I started working towards that my entire third year of law school and afterwards. And then it was this past year in end of 2020 to beginning of 2021, when there was just that steamrolling of federal executions. And every single one, my heart was just breaking because I did the research and there were reasons why the executions shouldn't go forward. Questions about the cruel and unusual punishment aspects of the blend of drugs that they were using and the person's mental illnesses, or lingering questions of actual innocence. And originally I had been so set on like, I'm going to do misdemeanor work as a public defender. There's a lot of injustice there and I want to do that. I'll stay away from the big scary things. And then God was like, haha, no, you're going to do death penalty work. Wow. And so completely gave me a heart for that. And a job opened up in the Ohio Public Defender's Office in the death penalty department, right at the time that my then boyfriend, now fiance, and I were considering moving to Columbus, Ohio. And total Jesus thing, how it all worked out.
Wow. Okay. So what does that mean for you in your career trajectory? So you're only working with people who are in situations where the death penalty could be applied?
So I actually, my office does everything after the trial. So once somebody has been convicted and sentenced to death, that's when we step in. We do appeals, post-conviction, clemency, all the things that happen after their conviction. So you already have people that the court has determined they committed a death penalty eligible offense, which is aggravated murder.
And were you, from your Christian background, was this a topic that you had spent a lot of time, if any, thinking about?
Not really. It was something that wasn't talked about in the communities I was in family, any of that. It was just something that I knew existed. I knew it was part of the criminal justice system. And growing up, I probably thought that there were times when the death penalty was appropriate because this is what our justice system has determined. And if states say this is what is eligible for the death penalty, then that must be what people deserve.
Yeah.
I didn't start questioning it until I was halfway through law school.
And what was it that was there a moment or a case or a lecture or a book that sort of provoked that?
Yeah, it was a whole confluence of things. It was having professors who were public defenders telling stories about their cases and hearing the everyday ins and outs of that. It was doing a moot court competition, which is basically representing a fake client in, a pretend appellate setting. And I was representing a criminal defendant. And then it was reading Bryan Stevenson's Just Mercy. And I am fully convinced that book and movie are going to raise an entire generation of public defenders who were inspired solely by Bryan Stevenson.
Yeah.
Because those were the things that kickstarted it. And then it just snowballed.
Was there any sort of theological wrestling you had to do in terms of, at least the way I was raised? And Tim, I don't, speak into this if your upbringing was different. But I was raised to just believe, it's in the Bible, and so it's biblical. And because America is probably the best, setting for representing biblical values in the world currently, there seems to be sort of a permission given to at least have this as an option. Did you have to do any wrestling out of that, or was the kind of awakening for you, just so eye-opening that it was like, oh, you go back to the text now and you see things differently?
It was a little bit of the latter. The wrestling that I had to do, when I was at EV Free, I started volunteering with Royal Family Kids Camp.
Which is a camp for?
Foster kids, ages 6 to 11, where we just take them to have a week where they are just loved on and supported and given a safe space away from any of the troubles of their lives. So over the years, I had built connections with these kids, and it was so easy for me to get angry at their abusers. And so when I started doing criminal defense work, I knew that it would be incredibly hard for me to work on cases where the person was accused of child abuse or somehow hurting a child, because I was like, oh no, this is where my heart is. And I remember calling up Amy Gaw, who runs the camp at EV Free. And I was like, how do I do this? And she was like, well, remember that the adults who are hurting kids in these ways were once those kids themselves. And that was a huge point of transformation for me, to see that it's not just people acting badly. It is people acting as a result of their environment, their experiences, the hurt that they've lived through in their life. And then by the time I was in my third year of law school in the criminal justice clinic, and I get to go, we were certified law clerks and working as attorneys under the supervision of professors with permission from the Supreme Court of Ohio. And I go to meet my first client, and just sitting in a room with them, it's like, oh, you're a real human. We can read this police report and it sounds awful. It sounds like a lot of bad things happen. And then you're face to face with this person, and it's like, oh, yeah, you're a person. I'm going to interact with you. I'm going to love you just like I would anybody else.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot easier to break down those barriers. And then over time, it's been so cool for me to go back to the Bible and read it from the perspective of an attorney, as somebody who does criminal defense, just see God's heart for justice in that way.
And usually that's the pushback that you hear, is the heart for justice, or the argument on the other side of the fence, where it's like, how can you, I was just reading, because Shane Claiborne's been all over the place trying to stop a bunch of executions, and he's been pushing on the death penalty for a while. And just like last night, one of the comments was like, why don't you put your time and energy into like the victims? Like, why are you putting your time and energy into the culprits of the crime? Why are you not putting it into the people that? And I would imagine that's a lot of the pushback that you get from Christians, or I don't know. I don't want to superimpose. Have you had pushback or those kind of conversations with folks?
There is some pushback there, and especially mostly from prosecutors and victim advocates, right? Because this is their job. That is what they do. I remember meeting a victim witness advocate, again, through a church setting, we're both coming into this as people who love Jesus and love the ministry that we're doing. And I ask her what she does for her job. She says she's a victim advocate. Ask me what I do for my job. I say I'm a public defender. And she goes, "Oh, you're the enemy." And I was like, cool. Yeah. I wasn't going to say that about you, but good to know where we're starting off here.
Right.
There is some pushback there, right? And part of my job, I don't want to devalue the experiences of victims or victims' families at all. Those are real and they are hard. And I'm not going to blow past that or ignore it. But what I am going to do is make sure that the judicial process happens as fairly as it could. Because that's really what your job is as a public defender. It's to ensure that justice is done. Just as it isn't a prosecutor's job to obtain convictions, it isn't a public defender's job to get guilty people off of, any punishment. Both sides have to be working to ensure the proper administration of justice, to make sure that, all the boxes are checked, that their constitutional needs of the defendant are met. And that's, where I come in, where I make sure that everything went as it should. And so, yes, there is pushback of, oh, but people suffered here. How do you fight against that? Well, maybe my client suffered too.
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't given a fair hearing. Maybe the judge was super biased. Maybe the prosecution fabricated evidence, right? You can't say that you can't stand with a conviction that wasn't fairly found.
Do you feel like capital punishment has a place in a just society, or, you shook your head, nope. So go ahead and start talking. And why not?
So there are multiple reasons for that. Capital punishment, as it looks today in American society, cannot and should not continue because of the rate of error we have. Plainly, if you just look at capital punishment from a statistics point of view, for every 10 capital cases that we've had in America, one of those people has been exonerated. That is a huge rate of error. Could you imagine if 1 out of every 10 airplanes was falling out of the sky, we would do something about it.
Yeah.
But instead, we've just allowed this process to continue. So that's one of the biggest arguments with the death penalty. Whether you're for or against it, it shouldn't be happening while we have such a flawed system.
Wow.
But then when you go into should it exist at all, there are so many non-Jesus reasons why the death penalty is bad. People say, oh, it's a deterrent, right? It prevents people from committing these crimes. But actually, no, because first, it requires people to know what a death penalty eligible offense is, right? We could say aggravated murder, but what does aggravated murder really mean?
Right.
There is a list of factors that can raise a crime from first degree murder to aggravated murder, right? Certain things like if the person you killed was a police officer or under the age of 13, or if you did the crime while committing another felony, right? People don't have that list in their back pocket, making sure they dance around a death penalty eligible offense.
Right. Also,
when you look at states that have abolished the death penalty, they consistently have lower homicide rates than the states that still have it. I'm over here in Ohio where we have the death penalty, and Ohio is considered the serial killer capital of the US because we just got a higher rate of them. So when we look at the actual effectiveness of it, between wrongful executions, between not having a deterrent effect, it doesn't serve a purpose. And so many countries in the world have already gotten rid of it. The countries that still have it are places like North Korea and China, and Russia, places that we
Right.
as America like to distinguish ourselves from, say we're doing things differently. Oh, with everything else except for this death penalty thing, we're going to keep that on the books.
Right.
So it's especially ineffective as a deterrent. But that is the way that we set it up, right? We set it up as a, you don't want this to happen, so don't do this. This is meant to be a deterrent. This should scare you away from doing the crime. I was just reading these statistics before we came on here, like who, based on just American statistics, who opposes, who doesn't, and how those opinions vary based on education, political party, race, ethnicity, and it's, religious affiliation versus agnostic atheists, who supports, who doesn't. You can probably guess where people land on that side of the fence. And it's just really interesting because these are just like unbiased statistics. It's just kind of how this plays out. And people who are Christian tend to much more strongly favor the death penalty versus people who do not believe in God. And it's like, well, when you pull that thread, it's like, well, how come? Why? Where do we go when we pull? How does it unravel? How does it play out? Why are people who believe in a God who came and, to save everybody, that putting someone to death for a crime is the best solution to that puzzle? Like, it's such a fascinating.
Right. To adapt a quote from Tim Gombis, I know, I listened to the podcast. When you actually start to look at the death penalty, you don't actually need to do the work of deconstructing the ideas that support it, because when you start analyzing it, when you start looking at it with the heart of God, it deconstructs itself.
Right.
It's standing on nothing. It's standing on fallacies of theology and misunderstanding about God's heart for people. It's standing on limits of how far God's grace extends. And so when you actually dive into it, there's not a whole lot of good reason for the death penalty as a follower of Jesus.
Right.
Yeah, but I hear the voices, Renee. I hear them. Shane says something that just blows me away. He said the only reason there is the death penalty is because of Christians. That's the only reason. They're the group so far and above who support this, that if you took their support away, the vast majority of people are not in support of the death penalty. It was just a fascinating thing. And obviously they will point to the Bible, where, depending on how you count, I've heard it's in the 20s of capital crimes that were, named punishable by death in the Old Testament. And then, of course, the argument will be made that Jesus comes and he says, well, I've come to fulfill the law, not abolish it. And moreover, Paul seems to elucidate a role for the state in Romans 13 that says, well, they carry the sword. So this seems divinely sanctioned. Sanctioned? Renee? Sanctioned?
That works.
The Shawshank sanctioned? No, divinely sanctioned. And so I'd love for us to wrestle with, okay, how would we respond to that sort of critique?
So if you don't mind, I can walk through a few of these theological fallacies and misunderstandings that death penalty support is often based on.
We do not mind. We're fans of theological fallacy. So go ahead.
Love it. So one of the big one that comes to me is that I am sure most Christians will agree that our God is a God of perfect justice. But what we've been doing is substituting God's definition of justice with our own.
Okay.
Right? We could say God is a God of justice, but what does justice actually mean? What does biblical justice look like?
Come on.
And so when I think of God's justice, especially when embodied in his son Jesus, I see the man who stopped the stoning of a woman caught in adultery. I see the man who looked at the criminal hanging next to him on the cross and said, tomorrow you'll be with me in paradise. I see the man who dined with prostitutes and tax collectors and those who society had labeled the worst of the worst, which, fun fact, that's a phrase often used to describe people on death row. Society, the worst of the worst, we say, prosecutors and courts will say that the death penalty is reserved for the worst of the worst. But if you peel back that inflammatory phrasing, if you sit across somebody who's on death row, you'll see that it's far from true. And through Jesus, God's justice was no longer an eye for an eye. That's something you hear a lot in the death penalty arguments, right?
Yeah.
They killed, so they should be killed.
Yeah.
Right. And that there was a lot of early justice that way, right? You stole this money, so you have to repay this money.
Yeah.
This equitable justice. But that is not the system that Jesus said. Matthew 5, right? You've heard it said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evildoer. And then 5 verses later is when we have love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
Right.
But if Jesus is not enough, let's take it back to the beginning of the Bible.
Oh, man.
What's the first crime that we have? Murder, when Cain kills Abel, starting off strong. So what's God's punishment for that? Right? God could have rained down fire and brimstone, brought an end to Cain just like that. But he says, the ground will not yield to you, and you'll be a wanderer of the earth. And then Cain freaks out, and he says, oh my gosh, people are going to kill me if they find me. And God says, nope, if anyone kills you, vengeance will be taken on them sevenfold. God was protecting Cain from the vengeance of others, from being subjected to what many people would consider a punishment that fits the crime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? God was saying, I am going to protect you from death, even though you caused the death of another. So when Christians read that story, they say, oh my gosh, our God is so merciful. God spared Cain because of his great mercy. But that's exactly what our instructions are. Right? Everybody knows Micah 6:8, do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. Do justice through loving mercy. The words that God gave to Micah weren't do justice, make sure people get what they deserve, or do justice, obtain convictions. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. And so Christ's justice is unending mercy and undeserved grace. It's never, you killed, so you must be killed. Jesus's version of justice is no matter what you did, you are forgiven and redeemed.
Well, that, and, oh, Paul, you were a killer. Oh, David, you were a killer. Oh, Moses, hello, killer.
Right?
Interesting, yep.
I wonder if we get our definitions of like revenge and justice flip-flopped sometimes. The revenge is swift and it is equal to the crime that was committed, whereas justice tends to have a bit more around it. Often when you hear people talk about justice, you'll hear about like reformation or what are the circumstances, what are the larger circumstances at play in like setting up a playing field in which this crime happened. Not just the crime itself, but everything that went into the crime itself. And justice is often, at least in my understanding, starts to weave into like changing the atmosphere that enabled that to happen. So I spent a lot of time I think I talked about this on one of the podcasts. It might have been a while ago. One of my master's classes was working with a bunch of men that were serving life without parole in Lancaster prison down in LA. And so we were like, it was like the first accredited program. So they're getting college credits. And I learned a lot about the difference that education makes in people's lives. I got real excited about it. Watching what education offered to men who never had it. They were all being rehabilitated. And I saw a lot of what you were talking about, like the idea of people not being beyond redemption. A lot of these guys, many of them committed crimes that obviously put them in a place where they're serving life without parole. And you can call that a death sentence or not. Some people will kind of go to that side of the fence, like you sent them there to die. This is a death sentence. But watching those guys tell their stories. And obviously there's a few of the guys who are like, I didn't do anything. And then there's guys who've sat there with the weight of whatever crime they'd committed, and they were aware of it, and they'd repented of it for 30 years, and they'd found an education. They're trying to give back into society. And then we passed, I don't remember what law it was or what bill it was in like 2016 or so maybe, that a lot of these guys were getting a chance at parole, and a lot of them have been let out now. So I recorded that. That's why I brought it up, because I recorded that record where I took a bunch of those guys' stories and wrote the songs out of them. And so I listened to all of them this morning just to kind of like refresh, because we just moved and I found the binder of all of their stories. They wrote me their, like, there's like 45 guys wrote me their narratives. Like I said, write it however you want to tell it. What's your story? And they're heartbreaking, but the circumstances around most of those stories are just like a complete letdown of society around a group of people, and then consequences come from that. And then when I see that the death penalty, to me, the way I see it is like, this is a really quick, easy, decisive answer to a problem. You can pull the plug on something. That person's not going to commit that crime anymore. That crime is now whatever, it's fixed, and we're done. And then we can continue to do that over and over again. And instead, like, listening to all these guys tell their stories, and now what they're doing, now that some of them have been let out, and what they're doing in their communities, the young men that they're meeting with, the organizations that they've started, the education processes that they are investing in their community now, they're changing things. Like, they're changing the systems that brought them to where they were. There was that phrase that went around when we were working there. It was like hurt people, but healed people will heal people. It's just breaking these cycles that putting someone to death doesn't do that. It doesn't offer, sorry, I'm on a rant now. I'm going to stop talking, but
no, it's a good rant. And it's true, because one of the things about the death penalty, it's us taking somebody's fate into our own hands.
Yeah.
Right? Saying, we have decided you should not be given an opportunity of restoration, of being able to go back, to fix things, to heal, right? It's saying, we have decided this was so bad that we're never going to let you fix things.
Yeah.
And so I know one of the arguments I've heard while having conversations about the death penalty with Christians is that, maybe people believe the crime was so bad, the person is deserving of death, but hey, maybe they'll have an opportunity to come to know Jesus while they're sitting on death row.
Right.
I hate the premise of this argument, because God's grace should be enough for, coming against why they should be facing the death penalty. But if we play along with that idea, that you can justify the death penalty by giving inmates a chance to know Jesus before they're executed.
Wow.
First, I've been to death row a handful of times. Funny that I haven't seen those people there yet. If you want to brand saving death row inmates as a ministry opportunity, then get off your butt and do the work. Love them, value them for the beautiful and treasured humans that they are. Right? We shouldn't be looking at these people as criminals or less than. They are loved by God and valued in so many ways. How can you be wanting the death of another human in that way? And then second, if they're viewing the long length of time that people are on death row as a result of grace, saying, oh, look at all this time that they have to redeem themselves, that's a fallacy as well. Like, yes, capital cases take years and years to fully litigate, but that's not a product of Christians advocating for life. That's a product of criminal defense attorneys fighting tooth and nail to keep our clients alive for longer, to postpone execution in any way we can. There's a story, Willie Francis. In 1945, he was a 16-year-old Black teenager, and he was convicted of killing a white man, a man who had sexually abused him. Willie was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death, again, all as a teenager. The attempted execution occurred less than a year later. The actual execution occurred a year after that. So there was less than a year between his arrest and execution. And this was through the proper legal channels in 1946. Like, my grandparents were alive in 1946. This isn't some displaced
Right.
Event.
Yeah.
And this isn't even one of the many stories of white men breaking into jails, proclaiming the name of Christ and carrying a crucifix on their way to lynch black men and women. Right? Christians have not been the ones advocating for the lives and opportunities of people on death row, of people committed of serious crimes.
Yeah.
And for the people who have, like yourself, Tim, who have done jail ministry, I am sure that you can say that spending time with those people, you wouldn't look at a single one of them and wish death.
Absolutely.
It is so much easier to read a news report about a heartless killer and wish the worst for them. It's
that is interesting.
Yeah.
That was one of the statistics, was that people were much higher. People who did online polls trended much higher to support the death penalty than ones that were asked over phone calls. And I just thought that was really interesting. Like, once you were forced to engage a little bit more, just over the phone on the topic, the statistics went down. Let alone if you are getting your hands dirty, metaphorically, and going in and trying to see what the system is doing. It changed. Like, you come face to face with people, it changes you. It changes the way you see things. You do see the humanity of it, regardless of not justifying the crimes. And just the victim conversation is a very difficult one within that. And those guys are all aware of it too. Mm-hmm. They're aware that they have caused something, and that's a big part of their story and their conversation, and then what they want to do to change. Like, they're aware of the weight that they're carrying. At least my experience, my small experience.
Because I was going to say, sometimes they don't have that awareness.
Right. Totally.
You have people with serious mental illnesses who had a psychotic break and are totally unaware of what happened during the commission of the crime. You have people with personality disorders, with schizophrenia, who, are crimes that happened as an accident.
Right.
Like, the amount of things that you have that land people on death row is insane. And so the people that you're dealing with, they are in various states of being and awareness. And sometimes, I'm sure that there are people on death row, I haven't had this interaction so far, who admit what they did, who are fully aware, and, take ownership for it and aren't remorseful at all.
Right.
Right? These give them the worst facts, the worst case you can imagine. That person is still deserving of life. That person is still deserving of God's grace. And who are we to step in and say otherwise?
If there are people who are interested in learning more, where would you direct them? Obviously, the Stevenson book.
Yep. Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson.
Yeah. Any others that come to mind?
Executing Grace by Shane Claiborne.
Yeah.
Is fantastic. Not death penalty related, but Rethinking Incarceration by Dominique Gilliard.
Wow.
Those are the ones I've read that I've enjoyed tied to Jesus. The Cross and the Lynching Tree is another one that's high up on my list to read. Otherwise, if you want to read about misdemeanors, Punishment Without Crime is a great book. Talks about the American misdemeanor system and all of the flaws that are there. But yeah, and then podcasts and stuff like that. Justice in America. Another Not Guilty is a fun one about public defenders telling stories of cases that they got not guilty verdicts in. And you just see kind of some of the ridiculousness that goes on in the criminal justice system with charges that should have never happened, faulty prosecutions, and all sorts of stuff.
Man, Renee, this is so helpful. And yet another reminder that sitting in the audience of our little community are people so much smarter than we are. And so
absolutely.
Absolutely. She says,
me, that's what I'm meaning.
No, the we, Tim and I. Anyway, so proud of you and so grateful for your work. And I think one of the real hard things to wrestle with, I would imagine, for someone like you, is that you do get a lot of opposition. And I would imagine some of that opposition has a Christian label on it. And very often the church will say, well, the only thing that really counts as ministry is saving souls.
Right.
We heartily don't think the Bible teaches that at all. So we just bless your ministry and are grateful for your time today. Thank you. If people want to get in touch with you, are you on social media?
I am on social media. I have private accounts, but I'm willing to chat with people.
Nice. I would imagine having a private account is smart in your setting. So
yeah, for sure. Although my work email is on an Ohio Public Defender directory, so
got it.
People can find me that way too.
Okay. Sounds great, Renee. Thanks for your time today. We appreciate you very much.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
So we cut the interview to honor her time, and then she said a couple of things that were super profound. And so Tim, through the magic of editing, I mean, the whole thing was profound, but then she was like, whoa.
She dropped one more big bomb afterwards. So
right. So we're going to sneak this in now. Tim, drop it in right here.
Yeah, I know. And I didn't get a chance to say this, but one of the most encouraging things for me in all of this has been to find identity in Jesus as both a public defender and as a convicted felon, right? To see the way that he the way that he stepped in to save the woman, who was facing stoning without ever acknowledging her guilt or innocence, right? We don't know that. Yeah. That's a big question mark.
Yeah.
And so to see the way that he stepped in, advocated, and helped her, I'm like, that's my dude. Yeah. That's what I do every day. That's what I want to be.
Oh, that's so good. He does it with the woman. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Brian Stevenson talks about that story in his book. And he was talking with a lady, said, we have to be stone catchers. And so that's always been a phrase that's been important to me. And then obviously Jesus Jesus as a convicted felon, right? It is fascinating to read the stories of the counsel hearings and his trial with a lawyer brain, because to read that, and I just want so much more information out of it. I want to know, I want the transcript of the proceedings. Yeah. Yeah. To know what that was like. And I have loved seeing the false accusations and the false testimony, but then also knowing that he, didn't follow Jewish law. He was healing on the Sabbath. He claimed to be the Son of God. In their eyes, that was the worst of the worst at the time. Totally. And so to see Jesus in both the work I do and in my clients has been just so cool.
Yeah.
Tim is an amazing editor. So that's the magic of Tim. So you can see why we were like, oh dang, we gotta throw that in there.
It is interesting. Jesus was a convicted felon. It's interesting in light of this conversation. I had not it had not played that way in my head.
True. Yes. And a couple of the accusations leveled against him were capital. When they call him a glutton and a drunkard, that's from Deuteronomy 21, I think. And that was a capital offense. That was a 21 or 24, I don't remember which, or 22. It's in the 20s in Deuteronomy. But yes, it's such an interesting perspective. What a wonderful, just story of calling and vocation. And I know, Tim, for you, this has been really since, was it before those prison days, or was it that ministry that really sort of opened you up to this?
That was not a ministry in the normal sense of ministry. The guy that I work with is an atheist British Indian.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that it only counts as ministry if you're working with other Christians. Oh, I forgot.
That is how people, anytime that this gets brought up in conversation, they're like, oh, what kind of, through at church, what were you doing? And it's like, well, that wasn't what we were doing. We were coming in and trying to offer education and rehabilitation or the opportunity of that. So.
Oh, that's right. I forgot the place in the Bible where it says only through an official church can you do ministry. I forgot.
Well, so prior to that was how I was told ministry worked.
Totally.
You
Me
went
too.
in and just like you had to give them the little Bible and tell them that Jesus sees what they did, but even though they're going to sit there, they're I don't know, whatever. But yes, that experience is something I'm still working with. I was working on a documentary before the pandemic started. So I've been in there a bunch more times with cameras, kind of doing interviews and talking with the guys and talking about education and the difference that education makes, the opportunity to education. One of the guy's stories, his name was Dortel, and he was a young African-American guy. When he was in high school, he went to his counselor and was like, hey, I really want to go to college. Like, what kind of opportunities do I have? Like, what should I do? What should I be looking at? What should I be doing? And the counselor said, you're not college material.
Oh my goodness.
Don't even worry about it. And then he ended up taking the other track, what opportunity to him, which was selling drugs. And he did that for a long time. And then during one of the, one of the times he was selling, violence erupted. His wife was shot and killed, and he went to prison as accessory. He didn't kill anybody, but he's still there. He's been there for 30 something years, and he has a daughter. And so their daughter has been raised without either parent. And he's one of the songs that's on the record. And his thing always like hit me really hard because he's gotten like 3 degrees in prison, and he's gone to seminary in prison. So he has pursued education and has pursued trying to change that system because of what was denied to him in the process. And it's so infuriating when you look at.
Oh, for sure. For me, I got to study philosophy of religion and ethics in grad school. And so this was one of the ethical topics we really wrestled with, was the death penalty, and which produced a bigger question. What is the purpose of justice?
Yeah.
Is it retribution?
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say with the revenge
or is
thing.
it,
That's better.
Yes. Is it rehabilitation?
Yeah.
And biblically, when the word justice, is very, very, very similar to the word for righteousness, and it's relational. And so, for me, that was super eye-opening because they presented it in a very both sides kind of way. Like, here are the arguments for, here are the arguments against. But the more I've been immersed in Jesus and the honor-shame culture and kind of the world that was present when he arrived on the scene, I've realized, even the commandments that seemingly had the death penalty attached, those aren't law in the same way we see law. So John Walton, you have to read a book called The Lost World of the Torah. He does this incredible exposition of how we understand law and command versus how the ancients understood law and command. First of all, laws were always given as examples. They weren't given as specific applications. So be the kind of person who, if your cattle trampled on someone else's field, would pay them back 4 times.
Right.
So they were demonstrations of wisdom rather than sort of legal codified expressions of here's what must happen in these scenarios. But the biggest point he made, and the one that was just mind-blowing, is he said capital punishment was assigned to biblical commands but rarely carried out, because in the ancient world, you would assign capital punishment to the commands that were the most important. It wasn't that you fulfilled that if somebody did this, then you would put them to death. But it was the king's way of showing which commands were the most important in the sort of legal code, were the commands that had the stiffest penalties. So you have commands around the 10 commandments that are getting capital punished, not because God was interested in actually killing people, but to show that those things were the most important commands of the Torah. And when you look at rabbinical writing, the rabbis would go to great lengths to to restrict the application of capital punishment to the most extreme circumstances imaginable. And they did that understanding that God's heart wasn't to have a system of justice that put people to death, but rather held out every possibility imaginable for restoration and reconciliation. And so the way I hear Renee's argument, and I think it's really sophisticated, is on the one hand, there are biblical grounds to doubt that there is a one-to-one correspondence between a command in the Old Testament to execute somebody for a crime and how we understand in our legal system commands and crimes and execution. And then secondly, even if you think there's a biblical case to be made, the current application of the death penalty in America is unjust and an expression of injustice towards minority people.
Yeah.
And so I think that's, even if you want to make the biblical argument, no, there's a place for this. It's hard for me, without pre-committing to a political viewpoint, it's hard for me to understand how you can make a death penalty argument just based on the statistics alone and how infrequently or unfairly, this is applied. And read Shane's book. Shane's book is just, it's so good onto this. And and it's also the recognition that, the work of Jesus in the world, it is not part of the Christian duty in the world to sit in judgment of the world. And so the fact that we even see the eye for eye command was given as a restriction, but Americans view it as permission. And that's not at all the heart. In fact, Jesus restricts its permissiveness drastically in the Sermon on the Mount. But even as it stood in Old Testament context, it was a restriction. You could only take an eye for an eye. And so the fact that it's used as permission and the fact that it's used without or apart from the countering, the context of Jesus, the nuancing of Jesus, just says, man, I just don't think we're in any safe space to feel good about this. And then if you just want to argue the economic, well, it's just less expensive. Man, God bless you, you good capitalist, but that is
well, just
utterly anti-biblical.
Positioning ourselves as people that do not pursue the right to redemption for other folks has always bothered me, and then purposefully denying a chance at redemption for somebody. Yeah. Even if that redemption, even if they don't get out of jail, if the redemption is that they're sitting in there or whatever, I don't know, but that has bothered me that we feel like we have the right to take that from somebody. Yeah. And sitting with all those guys, you just see that over and over again. Like, at least again, it's a small sample that I was around, and it was men that had been working hard to earn the right to be in the cell block that they were in and to be a part of the school and the education process that we were a part of. They had been no offenses for 10 years or something. Like, they had been working really hard to earn the right to be in that position. So,
So, and this even fits into the larger issues of what it is to be pro-life. Yes. Right? One of the things we've suggested and that I've really changed on has been over the last 20 years or so, recognizing that pro-life isn't just pro-baby, but there are a series of political opinions that I have as a result of that theological commitment, right? Whether that's about immigration policies and I'm not saying that people who disagree aren't being biblical. I'm just saying I think there is a lack of consistency in the application of the phrase pro-life, if that only means pro-baby, and it doesn't take into consideration all of these other, whether it's just war, whether it's capital punishment, whether it's immigration policy. I see them as one big giant furball and not separate issues.
Well, I'm curious if it's like, Abortion. We've tried to solve abortion by making it illegal, right? So it's another like, let's make a decisive decision, out of sight, out of mind. It involves very little work on our part with mothers, with societal institutions, or the way we're set up that put people into the positions that they're making those choices. It seems to me that we like to make it just as simple as possible. And that's what I was getting at with the death penalty too. It doesn't require you to go and sit with someone or to try to change
no nuance,
institutions or anything. You can just be like, oh, we kill them, it's done.
Yeah.
And abortion, we vote it out, it's done. The nuance and everything that goes around, the actual blood of people and the issues, we don't necessarily want to invest in. And that seems very unbiblical to me.
Yeah.
Do we want to stop babies from being killed? Probably. I think most people would say that. I think even most pro-choice people would say that. Mm-hmm. Do we want to stop? Do we think it's right should murder, replace murder? Like, should we kill somebody who committed murder? Should murder be the response to murder?
Right.
I think in conversation, most people would probably, through conversation, come to a no. But it's easier to just have these really quick responses to things. And that one of the other guys on the record too is this guy named Lorenzo, and he was like 15 when he came from an abusive home, was in the city, joined a gang. The gang took care of him, became his family. And then it's easy that those are the people who are willing to take a bat for you. You'll take a bat for them. And I mean, when you break it down, you understand he was 15 when he committed a murder and had to go to jail for the rest of his life. He became a Christian in prison and had to get jumped out of his gang in the prison so that he could pursue a life with Jesus. Yeah. And I was like, man, he sacrificed a lot more to claim the name of Christ than I ever will. Yeah. In multiple ways. And it's just I don't know. Maybe I'll throw his song in the end because it made me think of like what justice, music is justice is.
And why don't you link the album again? Because in this context, that album has a whole different
and I just like letting their stories be heard. It's not to promote me, but it's all their stories.
Yeah, but Tim, you also happen to be, kind of gifted, so I'll promote you. But we'd love to hear from you. Is this something that, especially if you have a contrary opinion, what would be some of the arguments you would put forward, or have you changed your mind on this one way or the other? We'd love to hear from you. Yeah. As always, man, whenever we get into controversial stuff, we want to walk the balance between having opinions ourselves and also making room at the table for all sorts of people who disagree or in process just like we are. So anyway, we'll end it here. No Seth Erie today. He's at school. She's preparing. He doesn't know he's preparing, but he's preparing for some snow. He's a sledder, dude. He is all about the sledding. So we gotta find a hill. Anyway, all that is to say, friends, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance to you. And in these days, may he give us peace. See you next time.
Two roads, one led off to the cage, the other led down 6 feet deep in the grave. I could have gone back, found that boy in the home, no family to speak of, unsure where to go. My best friend was taken at the age of 15. He was shot in the head, left dead on the street. They're all dead-end streets. See, I found a home like-minded souls, these broken toy soldiers with minds like hot coals. We live by the sword, and we drink till we don't. The pain of our choices led to life without parole. But I found the